This is the Sunday stream opening song because the other song is copyrighted. La 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 la. Oh, look, here comes Dog Cat Fox.
Hi, Sky.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Sunday stream, the stream I do on Sundays, because Sunday is the day to stream on Sundays. Hope you're all doing well on this beautiful Sunday morning. It's thankfully kind of overcast where I am, so it's cooler than the last couple of days, but it's all relative, so it's still a little muggy, as it were. Before I get into today's subject matter, who's joining me on this beautiful Sunday morning? As it were, Tyrannus Alexandrius the Invictus Lich, Keeverdam. Thank you, Keeverdam, for the GoFundMe. I'll get to that in a second. Old Guy Gamer, good morning. Somnamnul Nation. Noah Asensio, it's your birthday. Well, you know what we do around here when it's somebody's birthday? We acknowledge it's your birthday. Or this. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Noah Asensio. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Noah. Hope you have a good one. And thank you for showing up today. Who else is here? Bridget, Spoonie the Rebel, Robert Pincus, Ryan R., Mike Savage, Blarg, Chicago Mike, Shadowclaw, Toku154, Nonvite Rex, and Stolka, Maddie's House of Geek. And I think that's everybody I see. Do you see what I see? But yes, at the top of the chat box, guys, there is a link there to a GoFundMe for our friend, Twisted Skipster's friend, Tracy, who is in need of a little help with some bills and life crisis. If you can take a look at that and donate if you can. If you can't donate, that's fine. But if you can, share that out on social media. That would be appreciated. Lil Mo Sislak and Liesel7, good morning. And again, if I missed anybody, if you're lurking or if you're in the future, good morning. So today, I'll be doing something that I haven't done in actually quite a while. It's been a while since I've done a border news digest. And a lot of stuff has been happening in the last couple of days, particularly. And so I thought I'd go over and refresh myself, educate myself, and perhaps inform you as well as to what's happening at the U.S.-Mexico border. And yeah, so that's the preamble, as it were. So I've got 6 articles. I don't know if I'll get to them all. It depends on how long-winded they are and consequently how long-winded I am. But we're going to aim for about an hour and a half worth of real time. And we'll see what we get to here. So first off, and these are all going in chronological order, starting on the 25th of July. Again, a lot has happened in just the last few days. So let's start off with an article from the AP. A judge blocks limits on asylum at U.S.-Mexico border, but gives Biden administration time to appeal. All right. A federal judge on Tuesday blocked a rule that allows immigration authorities to deny asylum to migrants who arrive at the U.S.-Mexico border without first applying online or seeking protection in a country they passed through. We've talked about this previously on the last Border Digest, how this was a new policy they were trying to implement. But obviously there's been some pushback. But the judge delayed his ruling from taking effect immediately to give President Joe Biden's administration time to appeal. The order from U.S. District Judge John Tigar, or Tigar, not sure, of the Northern District of California, takes away a key enforcement tool set in place by the Biden administration as coronavirus-based restrictions on asylum expired in May. That was Title 42, for those of you that don't know. Again, for more information on Title 42 and a whole bunch of other things, please take a look at my channel in the previous Border Digest videos. The new rule imposes severe limitations on migrants seeking asylum, but includes room for exceptions and does not apply to children traveling alone, which just incentivizes people to send their children alone to the border. This is great. Yeah, and here's the thing, just as a point of overall hypocrisy, if these same restrictive policies had been proposed or put in place by the Trump administration, you'd never hear the end of it as being xenophobic, racist, so on and so forth. But because Biden is doing it, I guess it's okay. And here's the thing. I don't disagree with the policy, generally speaking. So there you go. Quote, the rule, which has been in effect for 2 months, cannot remain in place, Tygar wrote in an order that will not take effect for 2 weeks. The Justice Department immediately appealed the order and asked for it to be put on hold while the case is heard. The agency said it's confident the rule is lawful. That's the question. Whether or not I think that just by the details, I like the idea, is it lawful? Because if it isn't, then it isn't. Because all of this stuff is just this tack on ramshackle rules and policies trying to make up for the fact that Congress hasn't legislated effective immigration reform in years. And this is all kicking the can down the road and sort of spitballing things, seeing what we can get away with legally or constitutionally or whatever else, because Congress won't act, can't act, decides not to act, whichever. Immigrant rights groups that sued over the rule applauded the judge's decision. Quote, the promise of America is to serve as a beacon of freedom and hope, and the administration can and should do better to fulfill that promise, rather than perpetuate cruel and ineffective policies that betray it, unquote, American Civil Liberties Union attorney Katrina Island, who argued the case, said in a statement. The ACLU and other groups had argued the rule violates a U.S. law that protects the right to asylum regardless of how a person enters the country. The group said it forces migrants to seek protection in countries that don't have the same robust asylum system and human rights protections as the United States. They also argued that the CBP-1 app the government wants migrants to use doesn't have enough appointments and isn't available in enough languages. The administration had argued that protection systems in other countries that migrants travel through have improved, but Tygar said it's not feasible for some migrants to seek protection in a transit country and noted the violence that many face in Mexico in particular. Quote, while they wait for an adjudication, applicants for asylum must remain in Mexico, where migrants are generally at heightened risk of violence by both state and non-state actors, unquote, the judge, an appointee of President Barack Obama, wrote. He also wrote that the rule is illegal because it presumes that people are ineligible for asylum if they enter the country between legal border crossings. But, Tygar wrote, Congress expressly said that should not affect whether someone is eligible for asylum. The judge also rejected the administration's arguments that it had provided other avenues for people to come to the U.S., and that should be taken into account. The administration has pointed to a program that allows in as many as 30,000 migrants a month from Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela if they have a sponsor and fly into the U.S. The judge noted that such pathways are not available to all migrants. The Biden administration also argued that it was allowing potentially hundreds of thousands of people into the U.S. through the CBP-1 app. Migrants use the app to schedule an appointment to present themselves at the border to seek entry to the U.S. and request asylum. Tygar noted that demand outstrips the 1,450 appointments currently available daily, leaving asylum seekers waiting in Mexico where they're at, quote, serious risk of violence, unquote. So for the hundreds of thousands, tens of thousands, or millions, depending on what time frame we're looking at in the course of a year, of people trying to get across the border, the CBP-1 app has 1,450 appointments daily. Yes, demand certainly outstrips the available appointments. I'm not quite sure how you would fix that without employing a few tens of thousands of extra people at the border. But who knows? The Biden administration said the asylum rule was a key part of its strategy to strike a balance between strict border enforcement and ensuring several avenues for migrants to pursue valid asylum claims. According to Customs and Border Protection, total encounters along the southern border, meaning migrants who either came to one of the ports of entry or tried to cross between them, were down 30% in June compared with the previous month. So putting up slows or barriers to people just walking up to the border and putting up more hoops you have to jump through, slowed it down. Great. Did that actually reduce the number of people trying to get into the country? The agency said it was the lowest monthly total since February of 2021. Okay. And is Kamala Harris still looking to address or investigate the origins of the border crisis. Yeah. Critics have argued that the rule is essentially a newer version of efforts by President Donald Trump to limit asylum at the southern border. Well, the critics would be correct. Critics would be correct because as much as Biden railed against Trump's policies while he was campaigning for president, when he became president and realized the situation at hand was untenable, he ran for the same kind of policies. Because simply opening the border or not having any kind of hoops to jump through was causing an absolute crisis. And that crisis hasn't ended. It's just that contacts at the border have reduced by 30%. Not quite sure how that affects the overall number of people trying to get across the border. We'll probably get to that in future articles. Trump derided Tigar as an Obama judge after Tigar rejected a Trump administration policy barring people from applying for asylum except at an official border entry point. That effort got caught up in litigation and never took effect. Tigar also ruled against the Trump administration's efforts to limit asylum to people who don't apply for protection in a country they travel through before coming to the U.S. The Supreme Court eventually allowed that. Well, I'll give Judge Tigar credit. He's consistent, at least. It really doesn't matter which administration he is ruling for or against of. He's consistent. But yes, as much as I might like efforts to try to slow down or disincentivize people from throwing their lives away, coming to the border or through other countries that are dangerous, if it's not legal, then obviously there's a problem. And but this is the problem with Congress not having updated immigration policy or really tried to do anything about it for years. It's all this tack on, bolted on policies and executive orders and let's see what the court will or will not allow kind of thing over and over again. So there you go. Before I move on to the next article, once again, as soon as it updates here on StreamYard, thank you, Derek LaRue, again, for your generosity. Last night in particular, but today as well, thank you so much for your support. I really, really do appreciate it. Hope you got plenty of sleep last night because I was keeping everybody up just a little bit later than usual. And hope you're having a good Sunday so far. Thank you so much. All right, so there's that. Again, Biden tried to... So Title 42 implemented many restrictions, mainly sort of based on and justified by the pandemic. And then Title 42 ended back in May. So all of these restrictions that Trump had in place that Biden carried over into his administration ended. There was a time limit. And in the interim, both before and after Title 42 ended, a whole bunch of things were done to effectively recreate or galvanize the things Title 42 was doing because it was obvious that it was having a positive effect on slowing down the amount of people trying to make it to the border and or apply at the border for asylum and continue to overwhelm our current system. And every time they try to do that, it's being challenged in the courts, as we see. So that's where things are at right now. With that, let's move on to the next article from the AP. There might be a pop-up here or something. I don't know. We'll find out momentarily. AP likes its pop-ups to remind me to subscribe to their newsletter or something. Anything? Okay. As illegal crossings drop, the legal challenges over Biden's U.S.-Mexico border policies grow. Is this going to be a repeat of the last one? If so, I'll just skip it. Let's see. This is from July 27th, so 2 days later. Immigration advocates said Thursday that an online appointment system to seek asylum at the U.S. border with Mexico is out of reach for many migrants in the latest legal challenge to the Biden administration's immigration agenda. Okay, this sounds like a repeat. Or just specifically on the app. The lawsuit says the administration, often working with Mexican authorities, has physically blocked migrants from claiming asylum at land crossings with Mexico unless they have an appointment through the CBP-1 app. It says the app is quote-unquote impossible for those with inferior internet access, language difficulties, or lack of technical know-how. Appointments are capped at $1,450 a day. Quote, CBP-1 essentially creates an electronic wait list that restricts access to the U.S. asylum process to a limited number of privileged migrants, unquote. Yes, that's the point. Now, whether it's legal or not, ethical, whatever else, but that is the point. It's to bottleneck the number of people coming to the border and giving the system and process and the people involved in that system an opportunity to breathe and actually get things processed. It's not a genius idea. It's probably not going to be effective, and obviously it's being challenged. But that is the entire point of it. It's to slow down the number of people coming to the border. That doesn't mean there are fewer people trying to come to the border. That just means they've reduced the number of official contacts at the border. That's what that whole 30% drop thing really doesn't ring true to me as progress. It's just sort of, playing with the numbers. Let's see. To a number of privileged migrants, according to the lawsuit by advocacy groups Al Otro Lado and the Haitian Bridge Alliance, and would-be asylum seekers from Mexico, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Russia, who say they couldn't get appointments while waiting in Mexico. More than 38,000 people were processed for entry using CBP-1 in June, and more than 170,000 got appointments during the first 6 months of the year, U.S. Customs and Border Protection said last week. Okay, how does that square with the number of people waiting at the border? And how many people, if you can even tell, have attempted or successfully crossed the border illegally in that same amount of time? CBP said late Thursday that the use of the app has increased processing at land crossings to historic levels, significantly expanding access to asylum and humanitarian protections. Not at 1,450 appointments a day. No. Sorry. Even I can't buy that with the number of people that are waiting there. At the same time, the agency said that it continues to serve people, quote, who walk up to a port of entry without an appointment, unquote. Then what is the point of the app? Right? I mean, it's going to be a first come, first serve for the appointment, right? So if somebody can use the app, they're going to get an appointment quicker than somebody walking up to a point of entry. So, okay. The lawsuit is the latest legal threat to the Biden administration's carrot and stick approach to the border that combines new avenues for legal entry like CBP-1 and shuts down routes to asylum for those who enter the country without government permission. Okay, officials say that the approach is working, noting a sharp drop in illegal crossings since a rule took effect on May 11th that allows authorities to deny asylum to migrants who arrive at the border without applying on CBP-1 or seeking protection in another country they pass through. In June, authorities stopped migrants nearly 145,000 times, the lowest level since February 2021 and down 43% from December's peak. They stopped migrants nearly 145,000 times. That's good news? Okay, in 1 month, 145,000 stops. How many got past CBP? How many attempted and didn't make it? I mean, I'm glad the numbers are dropping, but still, 145,000 in a month? But the lawsuits complicate President Joe Biden's efforts to introduce new policies. Quote, litigation is, to a certain extent, dictating immigration policy along the border, also in the interior, unquote, Kathleen Bush Joseph, an analyst at the Migration Policy Institute, a think tank, said. A look at some of the other legal challenges and where they stand. Yes, litigation is dictating immigration policy because Congress will not act. And so whether it's Trump, whether it's Biden, again, they are spitballing whatever they can do to try to stem the tide or do something to prevent an overall breaking of the immigration system. And everything is getting challenged. New asylum limits. The government is appealing a federal judge's decision to block the new asylum rule. Yes, we talked about that earlier, Judge Tigar. Migrants from Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela. Another closely watched case challenges the administration's policy to grant parole for 2 years to up to 30,000 people a month from Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela if they apply online with a financial sponsor and arrive at an airport. We talked about this in the last one. Texas is leading 21 states to argue that Biden overreached his authority, saying it, quote, amounts to the creation of a new visa program that allows hundreds of thousands of aliens to enter the United States who otherwise have no basis for doing so, unquote. A trial is scheduled on August 24th in Victoria, Texas, before U.S. District Judge Drew Tipton. Legal observers anticipate a decision in the fall. Mexico says the policy was critical to it agreeing to take back people from those 4 countries who enter the U.S. illegally and are denied asylum. Boy, this is complicated. Releasing asylum seekers in the U.S. An appeals court could rule soon. I was going to say could soon rule, but either way, on the Biden administration's use of what is known as a humanitarian parole, in which asylum seekers are released in the U.S. while they pursue cases in immigration court. I think that's a lot of what was happening under the Obama administration, but I don't know. I'm reaching back in my memory. U.S. District Judge T. Kent Wetherell II. Okay, let's just take a moment to appreciate the fanciness of that name. U.S. District Judge T. Kent Wetherell II said in a March ruling prohibiting the practice that the administration, quote, effectively turned the southwest border into a meaningless line in the sand, unquote. Sounds about right. The Border Patrol paroled 572,575 migrants last year, including a record high 130,563 in December alone. The practice sharply subsided even before the administration lost a lawsuit by the state of Florida, but it wants the option in case Border Patrol stations become too overcrowded. So, our system is overwhelmed. We cannot reasonably house all the people coming to the border seeking asylum while their cases are in process, so we'll just release them on parole into the country in the meantime while their cases are going through the process, which could take years and years because the number of people coming to the border isn't stopping. Good gravy. Yeah. All right. Other Republican-led challenges. Texas sued the administration in May to block Biden's policies, particularly the use of CBP-1. Quote, the Biden administration's attempt to manage the southern border by app does not meet even the lowest expectation of competency and runs afoul of the laws Congress passed to regulate immigration, the lawsuit states. I'd be curious to know what these same Republican lawmakers would have said if it was Trump pushing this policy. I really do. I'd be really curious to know. Indiana and 17 other states sued the administration on similar grounds, saying in its federal lawsuit filed in North Dakota that the new policies, quote, will further degrade our nation's border security and make it even easier to illegally immigrate into the United States, unquote. Neither case appears headed towards a swift resolution. Not surprised. Not surprised. It is unavoidable to compare the rhetoric between both sides and both parties, depending on who's in charge and what policies are being put in place by who. Because, on the one hand, you have this Judge Tigard, who in both Trump's case and Biden's case says these policies are illegal, unconstitutional, whatever. So it really doesn't matter who's in charge. And then you have the politicians who are saying things that obviously we're not in an alternate universe. I can't say for sure, but I really have to wonder if Republicans would be challenging Biden's policies if Biden was Trump. But either way, there has to be a pushback. There has to be checks and balances and everything. So on that score, I'm glad they're there. I still just wonder about the hypocrisy of it all. That's all. All right, let's move on to the next story. And here's where it gets down to brass tacks, as far as I'm concerned. And that's families and children. I've talked about this probably the most when I've done these border reviews or border digests. And that's my concern about people putting themselves and especially their children in harm's way in trying to get across the border. Let me jump over to the chat real quick. Renovatio. Yep, that was Obama. 81% of all who were released never turned up for the plenary hearing of their matter before the courts. Yeah, that made up a lot of the expatriate games videos I did in the early years of my channel, where you had stories of people who had been in the country for decades or something and had to register or check in with ICE once a year or every 6 months or something. And then all of a sudden, when Trump came into office, Trump said, no, if you're not supposed to be here, you're out. And then you had all these sob stories of people whose asylum claims were denied and had been denied for years, but Obama just kept not enforcing the law or, deporting people. And then the chickens came home to roost, and suddenly it was Trump's fault. Even though most of the stories I looked at, their asylum claim had been denied under Obama. But either way, yeah, but here's the thing. I'm not quite sure at the end of the day who to blame, right? Because again, no matter what president is in charge, no matter what party is currently in power, the problem is the same. You have too many people coming to the border and a system that is not equipped to deal with it. And so it really doesn't matter who's in charge. It's going to be a crisis. There's going to be an emergency every single time. How do you solve this? And if not solving it, how do you manage it effectively? Everybody's trying different things, and we're kind of seeing the results of it now. Let's see. This story comes from July 27th. So again, same day as the other one. Number of migrant families with kids crossing U.S. border nearly triples in 2 months. Wait a second. I thought everything was down 30%. But now we're talking specifically about families with kids. Triples in 2 months. The increase adds to concern among some senior Biden administration officials that overall migrant border crossings, which had fallen after Title 42 ended, might be rising again. Why had they fallen after Title 42 ended? Title 42 took off the restrictions. Okay, my mind is all over the place now. Okay. The number of migrant families with children crossing the southern border has nearly tripled in the past 2 months, according to Customs and Border Protection data obtained by NBC News, feeding concern among some senior administration officials about a potential uptick in overall migrant crossings. You don't say. Earlier this week, more than 2,230 migrants were crossing the border daily, on average, up from 790 in early June. Holy cats. Daily, 2,230 migrants, up from 790. While single adults are still the largest demographic seen at the border, families are the fastest growing demographic of undocumented border crossers, according to the data. Most of the migrants are from northern Central America and Mexico, according to the data. 3 senior Department of Homeland Security officials who spoke on the condition of anonymity. Why? Again, anonymity makes sense to me if someone's job is under threat or if there's something really important going. This is why. Okay, 3 senior Department of Homeland Security officials who spoke on the condition of anonymity say they are closely watching the number of families coming because of growing concerns the numbers could soon spike and send border numbers back to near record highs. Could soon spike from 790 to 2,230 in a month? You don't call that a spike? And why do you have to remain anonymous to make that observation? What? Immigrant advocates say more families are crossing to escape poverty and violence in their home countries, as well as to escape cartels, and extreme heat they encounter while waiting to cross in Mexico. Oh man, since the COVID restrictions known as Title 42 were lifted in mid-May, the number of migrants crossing the border without documents or appointments for asylum hearings fell to fewer than 145,000 compared to more than 207,000 in May. Where were they all going? This is the question I have. Okay. Official documented encounters with migrants fell from 207,000 to 145,000. Well, where'd all the people go? The number of people coming to the border didn't stop, right? So where did that differential go? That doesn't sound like an accomplishment to me. That sounds like people moved on to other places or other things happened to them. Or they did other things to get across the border and they just weren't caught. But with the rise in family numbers, the dip may be short-lived. If current trends continue, more than 160,000 migrants could cross the border without documents or appointments over the next month. Conservative critics have said migrants have incentives to bring children with them on the long and dangerous journey north to the U.S. because they are more likely to be released to pursue asylum claims. I don't think they're wrong. I think that might be a correct analysis. Unlike single adults, migrants who cross the border as part of families with one or more children under the age of 18 are not put in immigration detention under current Biden administration policy. The three DHS officials who spoke to NBC News on condition of anonymity said the Biden administration is not considering detaining migrant families. Well, then you're just telling people to come to the border looking like a family, aren't you? The Obama administration detained migrant families when the demographic first began to rise in 2014. Though Biden administration officials considered detention of families as a possible deterrent to migrants when DHS officials thought numbers would rise after the end of Title 42, they ultimately decided it was inhumane. Right, so everybody and their brother is going to show up to the border looking like a family, whether they are or not, which is irrelevant because there will be children involved. You're incentivizing people to bring children with them to the border to get an easier time and or a free pass. Can you not see the pitfalls of this policy? Instead, the administration is using a new program in which recently arrived migrant families in 4 U.S. cities are placed on curfews, and the heads of their households must wear ankle monitors until their immigration court dates. Yeah, and what's the time for those court dates to arrive currently with the mass and the backlog? Other policy options, including expanding the areas where migrant families are placed on ankle monitors pending their immigration proceedings, may be on the table, the three officials said, under condition of anonymity and basically giving a press briefing without their names being used. Because why? In a statement, a DHS spokesperson said, "What? Can I not know the names of the people paid by the taxpayer to be in charge of this stuff? Why is it anonymity? Why is it a spokesperson? What is this person's name? They may not be responsible for the policy. They may not be in charge, but why is it concealed? Why? I know it's not the end of the world. It is just a continuing annoyance reading these things." In a statement, a DHS spokesperson said, quote, "Families encountered at the border are being processed through expedited removal with strict conditions, including continuous monitoring and home curfews. DHS has already removed families through this new non-detained enforcement process." Removed families, wait, like remove them from the country? Or maybe I'm missing something. CBP has surged personnel and transportation resources to strategic locations to respond to migrant encounters. "We are continually evaluating operations and working with partner governments to address changes in migration flows throughout the hemisphere," unquote. It doesn't mean anything, does it? Okay. Sister Norma Pimentel runs Catholic Charities in the Rio Grande Valley. Well, you mean it's not a nun on the condition of anonymity? Okay. Anonymity? Anybody? Anybody at all? I try. It's all that I do. Sister Norma Pimentel runs Catholic Charities in the Rio Grande Valley, where her shelters for families have the capacity to hold 2,000 migrants at a time. She said she is now holding over 500 every day, but has seen the numbers grow recently. She said many of the families who come to her shelter are there because they can no longer wait in the merciless heat, unquote, and live under the threat of violence in Mexico. Although the Biden administration has expanded migrants' ability to schedule appointments for asylum interviews, is that through CBP-1? Many have grown frustrated waiting over a month for appointments. Well, again, when you have 145,000 contacts, right, or 2,200 migrants a day, and you only have 1,450 appointments available on a daily basis, yeah. Quote, they had to struggle with extreme heat and have been unable to get appointments, Pimentel said. Quote, so they are discouraged. They feel they have to do something different, so they are attempting to go through areas where they see other people entering, unquote. Right, so crossing illegally and putting their lives and their children's lives at risk. In the Rio Grande, by the way, the Rio Grande Valley. And what makes up the Rio Grande Valley? I think we'll get to that in a story here shortly. Just this week, Pimentel said her shelter staff delivered a baby when it arrived before the mother, a Haitian migrant, could get to the hospital. Krish Omara Vinaraj, I'm probably screwing that up, the president and CEO of Lutheran Immigration and Refugee Services, said families who previously had incentives to break up and send their children unaccompanied under Title 42 now have incentives to cross together. Title 42 turned back many families at the border, but gave exceptions to children crossing without parents. Quote, there is less incentive or reason for a family to send their child alone, and we have seen encounters of unaccompanied children go down every month since April. Yes, because you have incentivized entire families trying to make it across. Or groups of people that look like families. I can't stress that one enough. Hey, okay, well, there you go with that one. So we're incentivizing more people to bring themselves. Just look at this picture real quick. Okay, we're going to get to this in a future article here in just a few minutes. But you got this line of floats, and you have people with young children on their backs or walking or otherwise through the Rio Grande. Okay, this is recipe for disaster and has been uncounted times. Let's move on to a scoop. A scoop, I tell you, from Axios. No, I don't want to subscribe. Homeland Security short billions due to border efforts. The Department of Homeland Security is scrambling to fill billions of dollars in shortfalls across its various agencies, the vast majority driven by its efforts to maintain order at the U.S.-Mexico border, Axios has learned. Why it matters. The gaping deficit is a reminder of the extensive resources the border has demanded of the federal government in recent years, especially as Congress has balked at any significant funding increases. DHS has already told Congress it plans to reshuffle nearly $1 billion internally, roughly half of which will help fill gaps at agencies involved in immigration and border security, according to 3 sources familiar with the plan. DHS is also expected to ask Congress in the coming weeks for around $2 billion in supplemental funds to address shortfalls related to border security, some of the sources said. Well, unfortunately, we have to pay for Ukraine. So, there's only so many billions to go around when we have more important things to do. Between the lines, the pressure to request more money, as House Republicans actively threaten to impeach DHS Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas and push for broad spending cuts, reflects the gravity of the department's financial strain. From the White House's point of view, a Biden administration official told Axios, quote, it's a reminder of the cost of Congress's failure to fix our broken immigration system, unquote. Not wrong to a great degree, and not just with this administration, but for years. Okay. Let's see. Zoom in. Okay. Efforts to manage large numbers of migrants and asylum seekers illegally crossing the U.S.-Mexico border, as well as anti-drug trafficking measures, have put DHS agencies hundreds of millions of dollars in the hole for this fiscal year. DHS is planning to ask Congress for an extra $2 billion to ensure it can maintain those efforts through the end of September. 2 sources familiar tell Axios. They need $2 billion just to make it from July to September. Good gravy. The expected request comes after around $500 million was already moved internally through a process called reprogramming and transfer, which requires notification of Congress, but technically not its approval. So, hey, Congress, we're moving this money around. Doesn't matter if you want us to or not. Good gravy. Congress spends a lot of time appropriating funds to federal agencies each year, and members do not always take kindly to being overruled by the reprogramming process. Well, what are they going to do? Are they going to reform the immigration system? I mean, what exactly is the threat there? I don't take kindly to what you did. What are you going to do about it? Nothing. Okay. All right. I mean, obviously, they have the ability to do it. Is Congress going to stop them? The intrigue. The intrigue. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE, is receiving a significant share of the new funds, setting a record for its departmental spending. The money will fund detention spaces, alternative to detention tracking programs, and transportation work, according to the sources. ICE is tasked with the most politically divisive and contentious aspects of the immigration system: arrests, detention, and deportation. Its budget has long been a target of Democrats who think the U.S. spends too much on detention and deportation, and Republicans who think ICE is not doing enough to enforce immigration laws. Zoom out. Okay, Axios, I'm zooming in, I'm zooming out. It's all very Blade Runner. Biden's DHS already has been forced to reprogram funds multiple times throughout its presidency, with resources strained by the record number of migrants crossing the border. Biden's new restrictive border policies have helped keep the numbers more manageable in recent months. Have they, though? I mean, the numbers have gone down if you look at them from a certain perspective, but even as large groups of migrants and asylum seekers continue to gather and wait throughout northern Mexico. Yeah, the amount of humans coming to the border hasn't stopped. We've bottlenecked some of the processing, but people are, as has been described, they're getting desperate, and desperation leads to recklessness. And a federal judge this week blocked a key asylum rule that officials have at least partially credited for the declining numbers. Biden officials are concerned that if they are forced to end the restrictions in 2 weeks, it could lead to border crossings again surpassing 10,000 a day and overwhelming government resources, according to a court filing. What they're saying, quote, managing a broken immigration system operating under decades-old laws takes significant resources and funding, unquote. A DHS spokesperson told Axios. Boy, DHS spokesperson is really getting around. Really getting around from NBC to Axios. I tell you, that DHS spokesperson. Quote, we appreciate the $2.7 billion in the omnibus passed in December, and we will continue to work with the White House and our federal partners to engage Congress on any potential need for supplemental appropriations needed to safely, securely, and humanely manage the southwest border, unquote. Yeah, $2.7 billion. Well, that would carry you through maybe early October, mid-October maybe. You know, between now, a couple of months, month and a half, something like that. Hey, is there any good news? I keep feeling like what they want us to think of as good news is just sort of a Potemkin village. For those of you that get that reference. Okay, let's move on to the paper of record in our country, the New York Post. Oh boy. Okay, ending the southern border crisis means keeping guards' hands clear. Guards' hands clear. Okay, this comes from July 29th, so all of yesterday. A June report from the Federation for American Immigration Reform makes for very sober reading. There are now at least 16.8 million illegal migrants living in the United States. Since President Biden arrived in the White House, notes the report, 2.3 million illegal migrants have entered the U.S. Clearly, something must be done. Some see the solution in artificial intelligence. Okay, sell me. In May, for instance, Representative Nancy Mace, Republican of South Carolina, called on the federal government to use AI to better secure the southern border. How? More recently, presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. said he would use AI to, quote, seal the border, unquote. Boy, oh boy, AI can do anything. Anything. Okay. But the U.S. is already using AI at its border with Mexico. Back in 2020, Anduril Industries, an American defense company specializing in autonomous systems, deployed surveillance towers along the 2,000-mile border equipped with state-of-the-art cameras, sensors, and AI. Wow, back in 2020? How have those numbers done since 2020? Boy, AI was the real... Okay. Autonomous surveillance systems are intended to further ensure our border is impermeable. Well, I don't know if you've read the numbers recently, but that's not so. So why then does it appear more porous than ever? Because AI does... while the technology used to manage migration may be unassailable, many of the people tasked with monitoring it are not. Yes. AI is not the people actually doing the work. All AI can do is process information. That's it. And people, I mean, unless you're talking about some really macro level kind of, clinical psychopathic way or sociopathic way, people are not data. They're people. According to a recent New York Times report, cartels and coyotes, human smugglers, are earning a whopping $13 billion annually guiding migrants across the southern border. $13 billion? Oh my gosh, that could cover 5 months of the border budget. And helping them succeed is a web of bribery and corruption that's been allowed to flourish with impunity. Oh, good. Work by Dr. David Janksix. I'm probably mispronouncing that too. A researcher at San Diego State University who focuses on border corruption details the extent of the nefariousness at play. Nefariousness. All right. According to Janksix, I'm just going to say Janksix, corrupt border patrol agents regularly allow smugglers to pass through traffic checkpoints unfettered. You got any numbers on that? I'd be curious to know. What's more, these agents sell smugglers inside knowledge about how to avoid detection. So pervasive are these practices, says Janksix, that border officials are considerably more likely to engage in corruption than employees in other law enforcement agencies. Well, if I was part of an industry that had $13 billion to throw around, I could believe it. Worryingly, research published in the journal Antipode reveals that this corruption is systemic on both sides of the border. Well, people are people, so why should it be? The author of the paper, Simone Izcarra Palacios, a sociologist at the Autonomous University of Tamaulipas, Mexico, and an expert in illegal cross-border activities. Expert in illegal cross-border activities, notes that it is not simply, quote, a matter of a few bad apples, unquote. The problem is rife, if not intractable, with agents being bribed with money and sex. Indeed, according to the Southern Border Communities Coalition, which advocates for safer, more secure borders, quote, the culture of corruption permeates CBP, and DHS senior officials have estimated between 5 and 20% of CBP officers are involved in some form of corruption. But 5 and 20%. Good gravy. Between 2005 and 2021, 238 CBP employees were arrested or indicted for acts of corruption, while CBD officials took at least $11 million in bribes between 2006 and 2016, according to the New York Times. Quote, the cartels, unquote, noted Kennedy during a town hall event, are, quote, running U.S. immigration policy, unquote. If this is to be believed, I could believe it. Strong words, though sadly not entirely untrue. The problem has not gone without interventions, such as an advisory panel report from the Department of Homeland Security along with congressional hearings, but nothing has changed. So what now? You expect Congress to do something? What? CBP personnel enjoy vast degrees of freedom, yet very little accountability. Yeah, because they're probably spread so thin along one of the longest contiguous borders on the planet. I can believe it. They are the watchers, but who is watching the watchers? Well, the watchmen, of course. Go get Rorschach. Studies carried out by Norway's U4 Anti-Corruption Resource Center show how CBP personnel enjoy a wide range of, quote, discretionary powers, unquote, and these, quote, discretionary powers, unquote, which often go unchallenged, U4 says, directly contribute to border corruption. You mean we need more oversight? Well, don't tell that to restorative justice advocates. Anyway, much as there has been efforts to reform police culture, eroding the blue wall of silence, a similar push should be made to reform CBP culture, including addressing the green fatigue wall of silence. It doesn't really have the same ring to it. I think you guys need to work on that. Yeah, you need to get some marketing on that one. Yeah, blue wall of silence kind of, it rolls a bit better. Green fatigue wall, no, something else. As attorney Sam Magaram noted in the Global Anti-Corruption blog, CBP's culture, quote, too often tolerates bad actors and punishes whistleblowers, unquote. Combating this problem, Magaram says, means the CBP, quote, must provide better training in how to respond to misconduct, unquote. I don't think better training is going to work if you have a force using $13 billion worth of play money to try to bribe underpaid, overworked border patrol and personnel. I think something else needs to happen there. Not training. How about oversight? How about a massive employment campaign for border personnel? Remember, well, maybe you don't remember. I don't remember, but there used to be a time where we'd have these big government programs that would just employ people, just to get people to work, just to get people employed, just get a paycheck in their hands, that kind of thing. I'd be curious to know what exactly is the efforts undertaken right now to recruit and employ more border personnel. How widespread is that effort? How much money is being put into marketing that, and so on? I mean, I'm hoping it's at least somewhat significant, but I have my doubts. Then there's the National Border Patrol Council, the union that represents border guards. The NBPC has, on more than one occasion, deliberately blocked attempts to address corruption at the border. Well, are the people in charge of the National Border Patrol Council by any chance in touch with cartels or something? Holy cats. In fact, as James Tomschick, the man who spearheaded CBP's Internal Affairs Unit for close to a decade, from 2006 to 2014, has noted, NBPC members actively opposed every single one of his integrity proposals during his tenure. Well, why? So wait, you spearheaded the CBP's Internal Affairs Unit, but you didn't have any power to impose any of those rules on a union or on the personnel in general? What? As America's border crisis continues to worsen, preventing migrants from entering the U.S. remains more vital than ever. True, folks like Kennedy and May see solutions in high tech. I don't know how. I would love to know how Kennedy proposes to use AI to, quote unquote, seal the border. That one is still over my head. But keeping border guards clean may be actually the most effective technology of all. So we can't even trust the people in charge of the border. They might be compromised. I'm kind of surprised none of that came up in the previous articles. Or maybe I'm not. Oh, man. All right. Last article. Let's get through this stuff here. All right. This one comes from USA Today. This was published just yesterday again. And this is a very good question. After Texas used cruel tactics at the Mexico border, why didn't Biden speak out? Yeah, what were those cruel tactics? Why, let's find out. Cruel, unjust, inhumane. Those are the strong words White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre used to condemn Texas border control actions that include coils of lacerating wire placed at the American shoreline. You mean barbed wire? And reports of migrants being denied water in the extreme heat. Denied water by us? Okay, and on Monday, the Justice Department sued Texas over the governor's refusal to remove a floating border barrier the Biden administration says was unlawfully put into place and presents humanitarian concerns. The Rio Grande presents humanitarian concerns because of people throwing themselves into it to get across the border and drowning on a regular basis, including small children. It's there to mitigate and disincentivize people from trying to put theirs and their children's lives under threat. How dare you attempt to mitigate this threat? Says the White House. But that's not enough for some Democrat But that's not enough for some Democrat and immigrant advocacy groups who are still waiting for President Biden to personally denounce Texas Governor Greg Abbott's aggressive border tactics. Yeah. A floating barrier. It's aggressive, guys. Oh my gosh. A long string of buoys. So aggressive. Barbed wire to keep people from climbing over fences and such. Oh, so aggressive. What do each of these barriers require for any aggression to take place? Someone to look at it and say, yeah, I think I'll put myself at risk. I'll make the choice. These are actions that an American president, especially a Democrat, ought to be able to condemn without having to worry about the politics of it, says Representative Joaquin Castro, Democrat of Texas, told USA Today, quote, when he was running for office in 2020, President Biden pledged to restore moral standing in the world. Yes, he did, didn't he? Because everything Trump was doing was xenophobic and illegal and inhumane and on and on and on. Other events this week show why it's perhaps not surprising Biden has been more vocal. A federal judge rejected his asylum policy, which many progressives have called too tough, while House Republicans renewed calls to impeach Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas for not sufficiently controlling the border. Quote, Secretary Mayorkas, if you will not resign, that leaves us with no other option. You should be impeached, Representative Jeff Van Drew, Republican of New Jersey, said Wednesday at a House Judiciary Committee hearing during which Republicans repeatedly accused Mayorkas of mismanagement and lax enforcement. Well, it's a bit of both, if you think about it, because if all the stories previously we've read here are true, Mayorkas, who might be a terrible manager of things, is also working on a shoestring budget with corruption rife in his ranks. So ultimately, yes, he is responsible. The buck stops there, well, at least until you get to Biden. But the guy's got a heck of a job up in front of him. Anybody in that job, given all the other limitations and problems. Yeah. New York Representative Jerry Nadler, the committee's top Democrat, defended Mayorkas while expressing reservations about the administration's immigration policies from the opposite perspective. Okay. Quote, they have not uncovered evidence of wrongdoing or malfeasance of any kind, Nadler said of Republicans. Well, I mean, specifically on Mayorkas's part? Okay. They have policy disagreements with the secretary, and so do we, but policy disagreements and personal grudges are not a basis for impeachment. Anything is a basis for impeachment. Because impeachment doesn't, okay. Seth Stoddard, a former assistant secretary of Seth Stoddard, let's get this alliteration going. A former assistant secretary of Homeland Security for border, immigration, and trade policy in the Obama administration said Biden is caught between his progressive-based thinking, his border policies are too harsh, and the Republican right denouncing them as too liberal. Biden needs to keep the border under control so Republicans can't use the issue against him in 2024, but he can't disillusion his base in the process. It's incredibly tricky, he said. Who said? What? In this case, Biden is deftly what? It's incredibly tricky, he said. Who said? Seth Stoddard or Biden? Okay, in this case, Biden is deftly threading that needle, Stoddard said, all right, by having the Justice Department go after Texas without getting personally involved. Quote, I don't think there's any need for President Biden to up the temperature on an issue that's already pretty hot. The temperature shot up after the recent publication of an email from a Texas state trooper alleging employees were told to push migrants, quote, back into the water, unquote, of the Rio Grande when they reached the American side of the river as part of Abbott's border security initiative. So a state trooper alleged that to have happened. Okay? The trooper, who is a medic and made it clear in the email to his superior that he supports the aims of the initiative, listed several incidents at the Del Rio area in late June and early July, during which migrants were distressed. Those events included injured children, a pregnant woman who miscarried, and many others not given water or proper medical care despite intense heat. Abbott has insisted he's given no orders or directions, quote, that would compromise the lives of those attempting to cross the border illegally, unquote. Former Democratic Representative Beto O'Rourke, who unsuccessfully challenged Abbott's reelection last year, called on Biden to step up his response to Abbott. Quote, I know that the politics on this aren't easy, O'Rourke wrote in an opinion piece published in the New York Times. Wait. O'Rourke isn't even in office anymore. Who cares what he has to say? He has failed every time he's attempted to run for anything. Who cares? What? I don't care what Beto O'Rourke has to say. I literally don't care. Castro, who represents San Antonio, told USA Today he thought Jean-Pierre's comments were strong, but that's not the same as Biden himself speaking out. Castro noted that Biden took time Thursday to address, with mayors of San Antonio and Phoenix, the dangers of extreme heat that's baking much of the nation. It's hot in summer, what can I tell you? Biden touted steps he's taking to help, including increasing enforcement to ensure outdoor workers have access to water breaks. Okay. Quote, I'm glad the president said something about it, Castro said. He should be able to say something about this as well. Pressed this week on why Biden himself hasn't addressed what's happening at the Texas border, Jean-Pierre pointed to Biden's overall efforts to expand legal pathways for migrants combined with humane border enforcement. Quote, I think if you look at the president's actions, that says everything you need to know to the question that you're asking me, she said. I got to give some kind of credit to press secretaries, because even the worst ones seem to have such a art of not actually answering any question or saying anything substantive. Irate Bear. Diana Mutz, a professor of political science and communication at the University of Pennsylvania, said the backlash Biden might get for speaking out may not be worth the political risk, since most people don't pay attention to whether the president himself or a spokesperson is delivering the message. Oh, I think people pay more attention if the president was doing it. I think they'd pay more attention. I think they'd pay more attention if the president stood by the policies and initiatives that his administration is pushing. I just think, quote, yes, it would be good to have him talk about the fact that states can't have their own foreign policies, she said. But do I think this is influencing the mass public at the moment? Probably not, because they're not watching that carefully, unquote. They might watch more if the president came out on TV rather than having a spokesperson make a statement that's buried inside of an NBC News article. Maybe that's just me. I don't know. Research by the university's Institute for the Study of Citizens and Politics shows the public's view of immigration has become more positive in recent decades. In what way? But people still want to be assured that migrants are being screened and processed in an orderly fashion. Well, they're not, obviously. Quote, that's the level at which most people are following immigration, she said. Less than 1 in 4 Americans think the government is doing a good job dealing with the large number of people seeking asylum at the border, according to a June survey by the Pew Research Center. Less than 1 in 4 Americans. So less than 25% of Americans think the government is doing a good job. But I thought that people's view on immigration has been more positive in recent decades. What? Oh my God. Go away. Ads and no, stop playing. Stop it. Why did it jump back to the top? What? And now I lost my place. Okay. Thanks a lot, USA Today. All right. You know what? I'm done. I'm done. I'm done. USA Today, whatever you have to say. Okay, we're done. Thank you, England DG. If the workers are verified through an I-9, which they are supposed to be, a heat stroke or similar equals workers' comp claim. No employer wants that. Maybe we should just enforce the rules that exist. I don't know. You know, Biden making a statement that is effectively nonsensical or redundant and playing it off as though he's made some kind of grand gesture or accomplishment, or really any president. Yeah. I'm not quite sure how any of that was supposed to have anything to do with floaters and barbed wire. Okay. Texas put up barbed wire at walls and barriers, and they put buoy floaters across the Rio Grande to discourage people from trying to cross the border illegally, and specifically the Rio Grande, where people continue to drown over and over and over again. I should have pulled up that story. I should have, but I didn't. There was a story just a few days ago. Hold on. See if I can find something without so much animation going on here as far as an article. Let's see. Yeah, okay, here we go. Just from on July 4th. Okay. 4th of July. Let's see if I can get this pulled up. Just going to have a whole bunch of pop-ups and animations and crazy stuff distracting me. That was part of the reason I was stumbling over my words a minute ago, is because all the pop-up ads and videos playing. I hate that stuff. Here, let's do one more here. This is from CNN on July 4th. 4 migrants, including an infant, drowned in the Rio Grande River over a 3-day period, official says. Yeah, can you imagine why they're putting the floats up? It's stuff like this. And this is just one of the more recent stories. There's other things that aren't reported as much or have been going on in the last couple months. Law enforcement officers in Texas have recovered the bodies of 4 drowned migrants, including an infant, from the Rio Grande River along the U.S.-Mexico border since Saturday, an official said. The drownings come just days before Texas officials are expected to begin establishing a floating water barrier. So this is when the thing was just being deployed along parts of the Rio Grande in an attempt to deter illegal border crossings. The first 1,000 feet of the barrier are set to be deployed near Eagle Pass beginning July 7th, Governor Greg Abbott and other officials announced last month. An unidentified woman and infant girl were found unresponsive in the river on Saturday, and a dead male and female were recovered on Sunday and Monday, respectively, Lieutenant Christopher Olivares, a spokesperson for the Texas Department of Public Safety, said in a tweet. The woman and child were found after U.S. Customs and Border Protection requested the assistance of the State Public Safety Department's Tactical Marine Unit regarding a possible infant drowning, Olivares said. The Marine Unit deployed 2 watercraft in the river where they found 4 people, including the unresponsive woman and child, according to Olivares. Chest compressions were performed on the unresponsive pair before they were transported to a local medical center where they were pronounced dead. The 2 survivors were turned over to U.S. Customs and Border Protection. None of the deceased migrants possessed identifying documents, and their identities are unknown, according to Olivares. Great. In recent years, migrants have resorted to increasingly risky and often fatal paths to evade detection and enter the U.S. Near Eagle Pass in March, a migrant was found dead among a dozen people stowed away in a train car. 2022 was the deadliest year so far for migrants crossing the U.S.-Mexico border, with at least 748 people dying at the border, CNN has reported. And that's not counting however many people died in places where they haven't been discovered. Right, in the middle of the desert, crossing it on the other side of the border, being washed down the river into the ocean, never found again, you know. Migrants' rights activists, advocates have attributed the rise in deaths at the border to policies that have made it more difficult for migrants to seek refuge in the U.S., according to CNN's previous reporting. The worst such incident came in June 2022, when 53 migrants died after being packed into a tractor trailer and abandoned on the outskirts of San Antonio. That's not counting all the other incidents of people being packed into tractor trailers or train cars or God knows what else and having suffocated. Texas officials announced floating border barrier, right? And we've talked about that. The first border installation will cost under $1 million. The floating balls will not address the real and important reasons people are coming to the United States. The buoys are a blight on Texas's moral conscience, Donati said. After the drowning of an infant, doing something, anything, to try to discourage people from throwing theirs or their children's lives away is a, what was it again? Is a blight on Texas's moral conscience. Okay, David Donati, screw yourself. Give me a break. What would you say, David? What would you say to do otherwise? How many babies have to drown to make you feel better in moral rectitude over Texas's moral conscience or lack thereof in trying to deter people from throwing their lives away? This is the part that always gets me the most when it comes down to the lives of children needlessly being thrown away by their own parents or guardians, or people who aren't their parents or guardians but just happen to have custody of them at the time. Anyway, there you go. That is the Border Digest for, well, July, technically, even though I haven't done it in several months, so there's probably other things been going on. The other story that I want to follow up on at some point is the border processing stations that they are meaning to establish in foreign countries to try to give people a place to go without having to travel all the way to the U.S. border to apply for asylum. To apply for asylum within the country you're seeking asylum from, and where wait times could require you to remain in that country after you've identified yourself as someone seeking to flee from the country where you're under threat. I talked about that in a video, a actual video, not a live stream that you can find on my channel. It's probably one of the more recent posts about, the Title 42 crisis and the other things they're trying to do. I'm curious to see what effect, if any, or what the results are of those projects. I'll take a minute here for you guys, in case you have anything you'd like to say or add. Let's see. Advocast Diabli, no housing, no free food, no free education, no nothing. Go ahead and come if you want now. I don't know. I wish I had the solution. I wish I could, legitimately get the Nobel Peace Prize with the idea and the solution for this. But it doesn't seem to be oncoming. Renovation 2022 was so deadly as the administration called for them all to come in, same as Merkel did in Germany, or our own government did in Ireland by telling them in 7 languages, including Urdu, they get free houses. Well, you have sanctuary states like California, oh, lovely California, and other places, sanctuary cities elsewise, just telling people as long as you can get across the border, if you can get across the border and get to one of these cities, one of these towns, one of these states, you've got a free ride. I mean, through the game of telephone, there are people out there that think that all they have to do is just cross that line and they are good to go. And that belief alone has led to countless deaths and injuries and God knows what other crimes are taking place. And are we doing anything about the incentives within this country that people see as reasons to give their lives a roll of the dice? No. And the border is not being funded, and there's not enough personnel, and they're all corrupt, and Congress won't act. I mean, it is a constantly losing game. But don't worry, guys. Kamala Harris was sent out to, track down the root causes of the migration crisis. All right. Let's see. Scanner Daffley. He wants the border open scribe. He wants totally open. No, he doesn't. No. Here's the thing. That is rhetoric that got him votes in the election. The reality of the situation is ultimately he maintained the same policies as Trump. And after Title 42 came up for expiration, he implemented new policies that effectively recreated and galvanized those things that Title 42 was doing. Biden does not want open borders. He'll say things that imply that as red meat for his base. But even Biden and the people around him, more likely, can't avoid the pragmatism of we can't have open borders. We have to have restrictions. We have to have bottlenecks. The problem is it's all Band-Aids on an open wound. Okay? And Congress won't act. The money is being sent, is not adequate. They needed $2 billion just to hold them over till September. Right? A whole month and a half or whatever at the time that article was posted and the request was made. $2 billion to just cover them for a month and a half. And they had to beg for it. They don't have a budget, a regular budget, sizable enough to cover their costs. They have to ask for an additional $2 billion just to cover a month's time. That's insane. And that would be insane no matter who is in charge. And it's not like the Border and Customs Patrol and Homeland Security and everything has had some amazing revamp between Trump and now. They're operating on the same systems with the same people, with the same policies, and the same lack of congressional action. So it's nuts. Absolutely nuts. And Texas spends a little under $1 million for a buoy float, and that is a humanitarian crime. The border, everything involved in the border, is a textbook case of insanity and chaos. It's just nuts. And I wish I had a solution. I don't know what it is. I'm not sure anybody does. And so can I hold anybody to blame for not having a perfect solution? No. But holy cow, what we're doing and what is going on down there. Anyway, I'm going to stop there because my voice is about to give out again. Programming note, tonight, granted that my voice lasts, at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern will be the 4th edition of Book Review of the Vampire, where my friend Leonora and I are reading Interview with the Vampire and casually just analyzing it as we go, just for fun, just for the heck of it. You know, I like vampires as a concept. I've been a big vampire fan most of my life, and I haven't read that book, I think, ever. I read Vampire Lestat. I thought the movie would do enough to tell me what I needed to know before reading that book. But reading this book, I'm finding out a whole bunch of other things that I can see why they weren't in the movie. But we'll talk about that again tonight, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern, for Book Review of the Vampire, Episode 4. And a reminder, next Thursday at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, will be the next TED Excellence, where I'll look at another off-brand TED Talk. This time, I think I might have already found the one I'll use, but you never know. I mean, TEDx Dump Day is usually like Tuesday and then Thursday, so who knows what they'll dump in the meantime. But look forward to that. Everyone, I want to thank you all for joining me this morning. Moderators, thank you for keeping an eye on things. Even though everyone here is so well behaved, you have very little to do as my voice fades again. Oh, they're coming for me. Is it CBP? Did I not register with the app correctly? I don't know. Everybody who donated either to myself or to the GoFundMe at the top of the chat box, please take a look at that. Thank you guys so much for your generosity. I really, really do appreciate it. Am I forgetting anything? I'm probably forgetting something. Oh, the Discord. I'm going to forget the Discord. I have a Discord server where we Discord and stuff. Right? Is that how that works? I don't know. Is there a verb for discording where we Discord? Anyway, let me get a link to that into the chat. For those of you that like to join the Discord, all you have to do is click on that link, You'll find yourself on the landing channel, say hello. And in addition to saying hello, you have to say the secret word for the stream. The stream that has a secret word that tells me and the moderators that you watch the stream. And today's secret word is, how about spokesperson? Today's secret word is spokesperson. And boy, what's going on outside today? You'd almost think that I live near the border. That would be a ridiculous statement. And our first taker is England DG. England, you are now a member of the Discord. Oh my God, I was watching it live and there you are. Welcome to the Discord. Everyone, again, thank you for joining me. Hope you enjoy the rest of your Sunday. On the way out, if you'd leave a like, I'd appreciate it. If you have something to say on the subject that I haven't already talked about or I missed in the chat, please leave a comment. And I hope you're all safe and well. If you're not well, please get well soon, and I will see you on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.